Alrighty, so in this tutorial we're diving into curved surfaces with this deodorant bottle. It's a great little challenge for refining your modelling techniques and tackling slightly more complex shapes, so let's hop right into it. So to start out here, we're just going to go ahead and delete everything in our scene. And we're going to bring in our reference images, which as always you can find in my Discord server. Now I've noticed some people with the Space Marine tutorial have had some issues with this. So I'm just going to run through this a little bit slower than normal. So we'll bring in my first reference image here. I'm just going to hit Alt-R to reset the rotation, then R and X to rotate 90 degrees on the X-axis, and then G, Y, and 7. 7 is just an arbitrary amount. I just find it pushes it a good way away from our workspace so that it's in the background. Just hit Enter on that. So first and foremost thing, what we want to do is we don't want this to be visible from the back, otherwise it's going to interfere with our back view reference. So just in our image data here, the depth we want to set to front, and the side we want to set to, depth, back, side, front, my bad. So depth, back, side, front. And what this lets us do is see through the back of it, so it's sort of got back face culling, and see it visibly at the front here. What we want to do after that, and this is where I find most people get tripped up, we want to set our transform pivot point to the 3D cursor. We're going to go Shift D, and before we press anything else, R, Z, and 90, and that will rotate our reference image 90 degrees around the center point. I'm just going to hit this little 2 here on the image, just so that we're not replacing the image for both of the references. Just get the side reference. And then once again, so Shift D, R, Z, and 90. And that's brought in our third reference image. Just press the 2 again, open it up, and we'll get the back reference image. Cool, so that's set up. Hopefully that makes a little bit more sense for how to set up and rotate the reference images, because I have seen some feedback about that one. So I'm going to set my pivot point back to the bounding box. And just with all of the reference images selected, I'm just going to drag them up on the Z-axis just roughly until the base of the bottle is sitting on the X-axis here. And these reference images aren't exact either. I've been using a funky little setup to take product images. It's far from professional, very, very lo-fi. So yes, forgive me for them not lining up 100%. Then what we can do is we're going to go ahead and bring in a circle, and we don't need to change the vert count here because I find that 32 actually works quite well for this model. So we can just tap into edit mode here, and with our vertex selection we can just go ahead and E to extrude, and then bring it up on the Z. And so you'll notice all my faces here are red. And the reason I can see this is that if you come into your viewport overlays here, there's this face orientation. So if you just check that, if it appears red, that means that the normals are facing the wrong way. So an easy way to fix that is just select everything on the mesh, Alt-N, and flip. Cool. So I'm just going to tab back out of edit mode here, and we can just use S, Shift, Z, and scale on everything but the Z-axis. And I'm just looking at the left-hand side of the wireframe and just lining it up roughly with the left-hand side of the reference image. So once we've done that, if I bring up the N panel here with the N key, you'll notice that this has adjusted our scale, which isn't great if we want to do things like bevels and yada yada yada. So an easy fix for this, with the object selected, we'll just go Control A and we'll apply the scale, and that puts our scale back at 1. So with that done, let's just go ahead and we'll Shift D and duplicate the object. And what we want to do here is I'm just going to rename this one to be Shrink. And I'm just going to isolate the object to make it easier to see. What we're going to do is we're going to apply a 4x subdivision surface modifier to this, just so that the object is more dense. And I'm just going to set it to smooth shade. It's actually inconsequential, it's just force of habit for me to do that. And then we'll come to the object properties panel here. Under our viewport display, we just want to change the display as from textured to bounds. This way, if it does come back into our scene, such as this, it's not overlapping with our current model, and it's just not intrusive. And so I can just go ahead and press H to hide that. And with that in mind, let's just go ahead, tap back into edit mode, and let's just delete half of our model here. Just delete half the faces. Bring in a mirror modifier, and we'll apply clipping, because we only want to do half the work, right? And while we're doing this, we'll just add another modifier. We'll get a Shrinkwrap modifier, and we'll set the target to the shrink. And that'll come in handy later on. Right now, don't need it, but we'll just set it all up. So coming into edit mode again here, we want to define where the upper and lower limits of this curve is, right? So we'll go Control R to add in a loop. And you wouldn't be wrong in thinking that you'd want to bring the loop down to here, because you can sort of see that's where the bottom of the curve is. I'm going to tell you now, you're going to want to move it down just a little bit lower. So I'm going to put it somewhere around here. And the reason being is once we set everything up with our loops and support loops, the subdivision surface modifier will actually sort of pull the bottom of the point back up a bit. So this is just sort of compensating for that later on. And then we'll add in another loop cut, and we'll just bring it up to the top, roughly where the end of the curve is. Now, this brings up a little bit of a problem with these reference images, and that's some of the perspective distortion, right? So even though we've got it lined up properly on the side reference, it doesn't really look too good here. It doesn't need to be exact, pretty much. So I'm just going to bring this up a little bit further on the Z, just to somewhere around here. I'm just eyeballing it. I don't have an exact science for where I've placed that, but I know I can make it work, and so can you. Don't worry about being too exact with all this. With that, what I'm going to do is go back to vertex selection mode. I'm going to select this topmost vertice here, and then come onto the side view. So this is our middle vertice on the side. I want to just go one to the right of that. Just shift and select that. Press J, and that will connect a path between those vertexes there. And then what we can start to do is just push these vertices up just to start to form the rounded shape of the curve at the back here. And I'm just going to go ahead, Alt select this top loop and Control X to dissolve it so that it's not getting in the way of what we're doing. Cool, so I'm just going to do these first three at the back here, like so. And actually, just thinking about something, I'm just going to press this little icon here on the shrink wrap just so that we can actually see the vertex position adjustments on what we're modeling, just to make it easier. So yeah, I'm going to do the first three verts at the back there just to start to make the general shape of a curve, right? Then I'm going to come to the side view for the rest of them. So for the fourth one, I'm actually going to line it up where you sort of see the darkness from the refraction and the light on the edge. So I'm just going to line that there. It's not correct, but we're just going to use it as a point of reference for the time being. Then we'll get the fifth one, we'll do the same thing. And the sixth one, we'll just pull this up roughly until it's matching that curve there. So with that, I know that this shape is sort of nice because, you know, we lined this up on the back here. But I'm just going to bring this down just until it sort of starts to match the curvature a bit. Actually, I might just do it with this one here. I might just bring this down. Actually, no, hang on, sorry. I'll bring this one up just a bit. Then I might bring this one down. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so I've just taken this one off of that edge there that we could see on our reference. And then I've just sort of brought the rest of this down a little bit. I'm just eyeballing the curvature here. There's, once again, there's no exactness to what I'm doing. I'm just trying to make something that looks nice in my eyes. And I think that looks pretty good. So, if your curve isn't looking exactly the way you want it, like, you know, it's mostly there, but there's a little bit of a divot between each of the vertex positions, what we can do is we can just select the top one here, Control, and select this second last vertex here. And just using our loop tools, edit, we can just use a relax operation. And there's an argument to be made here for the fact that, you know, now all of our vertexes along here aren't properly in line with these edges. And yes, that's correct. And it will make a little bit of distortion, but once we have all the subdivision surfaces and everything on, it'll be such a negligible change. I don't really think it's worth getting up in arms about it, because this will resolve pretty nice. You know, if it was something more drastic, say like this, then I'd say that's a problem. It's going to be very noticeable no matter how much topology you throw at it, but this is pretty minuscule and it will just help sort of smooth out a bit of your curve there. Cool, so the next thing we want to worry about is the curve on the inside, right? So to plan for this, let's just go ahead and select all of these bottom faces here. I'm just going to go P and remove by selection. Then with that done, I just want to select all of the faces on the inside here. And you'll notice if we do an inset at the moment, it insets on both sides of the mirrored faces. If we press B, it doesn't inset to the boundary, so it finds wherever there's no more mesh, and it will inset and terminate there. So it does it in the middle, but it also does it at the bottom, right? Because we went ahead and we removed those faces, so they no longer exist technically. So I'm just going to bring this in roughly until where I can see the curvature, somewhere around there, I'd guess. And it looks absolutely terrible. But we can fix it up. So I'll just go Shift H to isolate those faces. Let's go back to vertex select mode, and if we just hold down Alt and select the bottom here, we can just delete these vertices because we're not interested in them at the moment. And just Alt H to unhide everything, sorry. If we select this topmost vertex and just go Shift S and cursor to selected, and then select the rest of the loop, change our transform pivot point to the 3D cursor, and we'll just toggle into wireframe. It's going to go S and X to scale along the X-axis, and I'm just going to push this out to roughly match up to the curve here. So I think that's cool, and then we'll just need to push this one at the bottom out a little bit more. And I think that looks alright. And it's really bunched up at the top here, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select between these points, and I'm going to do a space and relax operation, and then I might actually just select all of them and just do a cheeky little relax operation there just to make the distribution a little bit more even. Just looks a little bit nicer. Cool. So before we continue, let's just tab out of edit mode, select this bottom ring of faces, shift select the object and Control J to join the meshes back together. Tab back into edit mode, press A to select everything, and then we can go mesh, merge, and by distance, and it's just going to remove the overlapping vertices that would have been down here. Cool. So with this, let's go into our side view and select this loop of edges here, or loop of verts. Let's go back into wireframe. So I'm just looking at the topmost vert here, and I'm just going to change our transform pivot point back to bounding box and press Shift and C to get rid of our 3D cursor. I just think it's a bit distracting at the moment. Just looking at this top vertex here, I'm just going to press G, and I forgot to just hover over the shrink wrap and press Control A outside of edit mode to apply it. So looking at the top vertex and pressing G, I'm just going to move it so it sits in just at the top of the divot here, right? And then it's just going to be a little bit of manual cleanup with these vertices here, so I'm just going to pull them out on the y-axis just to try to fit this curve. And what I'm referencing is you can sort of see the light where it catches and pinches on the reference image. I'm just trying to line it up in the middle of there. Once again, don't have an exact point of reference. I'm just eyeballing it the best as you guys are as well. So somewhere in around there, I think it's looking pretty alright. So with that, I'm just going to actually just do a space. Oops. Just going to do a space between there, because it just feels like it was a little bit short at the top there. I'm just going to go edge select mode, select this edge, select this bottom edge, and press F to fill in a face. And then in vertex select mode, I'm just going to select these three, and yeah, we're going to fill in a triangle. Probably a bit weird, I know, but it's okay, we will resolve it. And then just back to edge select mode here, select this leftmost edge, and we can just spam F a few times to fill in a bunch of faces. Cool. Alright. So we've pretty much got the basic shape blocked out now, right? So it's getting there. It's almost there. I just want to put in a few more safety precautions. So we've got this one shrink wrap mesh here, right? Just to make sure it stays as a cylinder. We're going to go create another one just at the back here because we're going to do a bit of work on it. So I just want to go select all of these faces at the back, and I'm just thinking I might actually go ahead and select these, and I'll do a space. I might do a relax. I don't know what's going on there. That's very strange. Alright, I just won't do it to the center one. Just going to relax those just to add a little bit more even distribution around it. I just didn't like the way it looked before. And then, sorry, back to what I was saying. We'll just select these faces at the back here. Shift D to duplicate. and then P to remove by selection. Just isolate the view on this. And I'm just going to rename this. This can be called shrink_back. And we can apply the mirror modifier on it. And we'll chuck a 4 times, oops, not a shrink wrap, a subdivision surface, sorry. 4 times subdiv. I'll just go ahead, shade smooth. Once again, shade smooth doesn't actually affect it. It just looks nicer. And then holding down Alt, I'm going to select this outer edge, and then Shift and Alt, this bottom edge, Shift E and 1. And we just want to do that because we want to crease up the outer extremities of this model so that it's not rounding things out and making strange results once we shrink wrap to this later on. So I'm going to go ahead and hide that model. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to bring our shrink wrap modifiers back in. So let's go to shrink wrap. And let's just set this to our shrink target. And you'll notice that's gone and destroyed all of our hard work that we just did. Why would we do that? What we can do to fix this is we can set up some vertex groups to prevent this from happening. I'm just going to disable the visibility of that shrink wrap for the time being. So I'm just going to go and select all the faces that make up this divot at the back here. Go to our data panel, add a new vertex group. I'm just going to call this one main. And just before we hit assign, I'm just going to go back over into our viewport, press Ctrl I to invert the selection, and then I'll press assign. So now I've got a vertex group on all of these selected faces. I want to make another vertex group just on this back section here, so the same faces that we selected for the shrink back model, select those. Press the plus icon here, we'll go assign, and we can just call this vertex group back, just for ease of access, right? So if we enable the shrink wrap modifier again, nothing's changed. But if we go down to this vertex group here, we can choose our main vertex group, and now you'll notice it's not affecting the back part, which is nice. So we can go ahead, we'll just pull in another shrink wrap modifier, and we'll set this one to be shrink back. Notice same problem, it shrunk the entire model to one object. We'll just use the back vertex group, and that's all cleaned up now. And I'll just enable these buttons here just so that we can actually see the effects as we're modeling. So these are just like safety precautions, because the last thing you want to do is get to here, continue modeling and mess something up on the mesh and have to start all over again. That's really painful. Actually, speaking of, probably a good time to save this project. There, and I'll just call this Deo. Save that. Yeah, just good habit to save things, just in case we lose any progress. And speaking of losing progress, I'm just actually going to make a duplicate of this model, and I'm just going to move it to a new collection called Backups, just in case, because we will start to more drastically overhaul the model. And so with that done, let's get into wrapping this up. So, the last thing we really need to worry about are these two triangles here, right? So, what I want us to do is, I want to go ahead and hide this triangle. Control R to add in a loop, and let's just slide it up. Actually, we'll do GGE so that it's snapping to the top edge. Alt H to unhide. And then we're just going to go double tap G to do an edge slide. I'm just going to slide this up. Slide this one up a bit as well. Slide this one up a bit. And then just select towards the middle vertice, and we can just space those out to do the rest of the work for us. And what you'll notice is that that's added in a nice support loop there for us. So it's done a lot of the work there for us. The next thing we want to do is we want a support loop on the outside edge of this one here, right? It's a little bit more complicated, but... So at the moment, if we try to add in an edge loop, notice how it follows the shape, and then around here it just darts off horizontally. And so this face here is the one responsible for it. So I'm just going to go to face select mode. I'm just going to hide this one. We can go ahead, add in that loop. So now you notice it follows the whole way down and it doesn't terminate out. With that, I then want to go Control R and add in a loop at the bottom here. Go Alt H, and just using the knife tool, we can just cut this up to here. And with the knife tool still active, let's make a cut to there. And we can just go ahead and Control X to dissolve that edge there. And sorry, I just realised I've got both of my shrink wraps turned off, so you've probably just run into an error that looks a little bit like this. And the reason this is happening is because the back vertex group here has actually bled onto select. It's actually bled onto this edge here. So if I just go ahead, turn the shrink wrap off, and select the back vertex group, see how this edge is now a part of it, as well as this edge here. I'm going to select both of these. I'm just going to remove them. I'll turn the shrink wrap back on, and now it's all good. It all works. So, and that's something we're just going to have to be cognizant of. It's these vertex groups are going to bleed into one another as we're working, so we're just going to have to remain cognizant of that. The next important thing, so we've got another triangle that we've introduced now, and I kind of just want to push that triangle up to here. And the way we're going to do that is by following just the process of cutting down here. So now we've got a quad that's cut in half, so we can just go ahead and dissolve that edge. The triangle's now here, right? So we can repeat that process again, dissolve that edge, and then we can repeat that process one more time. And then, actually, sorry, we don't really need to repeat it again. Sorry, my bad. So let's go back a step. So yeah, we'll dissolve that edge. And now I've got this one here, so we can just actually dissolve this edge. And if we were to add in a loop, this edge would flow down here into this face. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and hide this face here. Then add a loop cut, K, and just cut these together again. And now we've integrated the topology together. So let's go ahead and focus on this triangular face now. So to start, let's just use the knife tool, click on this vert, C to do a straight cut, and Z to cut through the mesh. And we'll do the exact same thing down here. So I'm just going to do knife tool on this edge here. I'm going to do it further to the bottom. Doesn't really matter where. We can adjust it with a loop slide, an edge slide afterwards. So just click, C, Z. Going to bring it out to the right, click, and then bring it all the way out to the left and click. So it's like that. So GG. Just slide this down a bit just to make that triangle a little bit smaller. We will resolve it into a quad soon. And then I'm just going to add in 2 loop cuts through here. So with all of this, I just want to go ahead and check our vertex group. So let's have a look at our back select. So the back vertex group's alright. We're just missing this face here, so let's just go and assign that. And our main vertex group has seemingly come and intruded on our back vertex group. So simple fix, let's just select the back vertex group here. Go to main, and then just remove. And that should help clean up any fighting, and I'm just going to assign these 2 faces back to the main vertex group. There we go, cool. So, and you'll notice these loops that we cut in before, they terminated because this face here is an engon, so we'll just use K, C to just cut a straight line. We don't want to use Z here because we don't want to cut it into the front faces of the mesh. So that's looking nice now. So let's just start to work through just distributing out these edges here because it's a little bit tight and dense. So I'm just going to select between these points. I'm just going to see what does the space operation look like. That's pretty good. So might be able to do it there as well. But then on the outer edge of it, I think we might be able to get away with a relax between these points. Don't think that distorts these lines too heavily, so I think that's okay. And you'll notice it just sort of makes the distribution a bit more even just by spacing and relaxing those. And sorry, I'm just going to go back, sorry, you don't need to. I just realised I'm trying to get into the habit of using this panel here for the loop tools and not my shortcuts. So, sorry, I'll select these, I'll do a space operation on these and I'll relax those. And then on the outside, did we do a space on it? No, because that's way too much. See how that like completely skews this? That's no good. So I'll just do a relax on that. That looks nice now. Cool. Yeah, I'm going to do my best to use the loop tools up here and not my shortcuts menu, because I know that doesn't help you guys learn if I do that. Alright, so now we just need to fix up a bit of the topology in the back here, and then we'll pretty much be all sorted, and there'll just be a little bit of management we need to do with the topology up here. So what we want to do here is we pretty much want to get a loop that runs up here and through to the middle, and then we'll get a loop that runs through here and a loop that runs through here, and this loop that is currently here, we're just going to push that down. So if that didn't make any sense, it's all good. I'm about to show you, and it will make sense. So let's start with this part first. Let's just double tap G, do an edge slide down. And then I'll just do it for that one there, just to space things out. Let's go back view, and we'll just K and C. We'll just cut in that line there. Let's go ahead and just dissolve those two edges. K and C again. Let's cut this cross. And we're just going to do an edge slide to bring this vert back. And what we can do here, so we've got this triangle now, which is pesky. But if we go ahead, select that edge and go edge and subdivide. Go back to vertex select, and then we can just select between these points, J, and then just double tap G, do an edge slide. And you'll notice we're starting to resolve our topology rather nicely here. So then there's just a matter of this one, and it's in a bit of a bad spot, but there's going to be really no hassle with adding in an extra loop here. You can argue the fact that, yeah, now we've got, much like earlier, you know, sort of like odd amounts of vertices between positions, but I don't think it's going to be the biggest issue in the grand scheme of things. So, and let's just select around these points. So I'm just going to do it to about there. So just before we reach that pole, and whoops, I'm going to use space and relax. And then for this one, I think we might just select between these points, space and relax. And then we will just do it vertically, so I'm just going to select between these points. I'm not selecting the bottom loop because I like that to remain sort of like a foundational base edge. And I'll go space and relax there. And that looked pretty nice. If we just want to do one final little bit of tidy up, I'm just going to select between these points here. Use C for my circle select, Control V, and I'm just going to go smooth vertices. Just makes it look a little bit nicer, a little bit more tidy. Cool. Alright, now let's address this little triangle here. Really simple fix. We're just going to add an edge loop. Actually, no, sorry, before we do that, my bad. Just realized, if we add an edge loop in there, it's sort of going to cause a whole lot of problems. Because I know that it will spill out between these two vertex groups. So instead, sorry, before we do that, let's just go ahead and Control A on both of those shrink wraps there, because we're pretty much done with all of our topology management on the curve surfaces. And if we just go Control R to make a loop between these points here, and let's just go deselect this vertex at the bottom here, G, G, E, and let's just slide this in. Out there, it can be a fairly tight sort of loop. And that should be good, and I can just go ahead and double tap G, just slide that up a bit. And I might just actually do an edge slide on this one as well. G, G, and E. Just sort of push that more into the middle, like so. And even without the shrink wrap mesh, we can just go ahead and space and relax these to just even out the curvature on the model there. Cool, so let's go ahead and apply smooth shading to this. And let's get a subdivision surface modifier and crank that bad boy up to 4. Now, you'll notice at the moment this doesn't look great, and that's because at the bottom we're getting a lot of pinching near this edge, which we don't want. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select between these points, and I'm just going to go space and relax. And it's still not quite perfect just yet, because we've got the same going on this side. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select around. Actually, let's just do it on the bottom two first, sorry. Let's do these ones, and we'll go space and relax. And then I'm just going to go ahead and select this support loop, because we never really did an edge slide. So G, G, E, F. And I'm just going to push it in a bit, and it's going to be pretty uneven. So the bottom, I think, is alright. And then I'm just going to go GGEF again, and I'm just going to even it up so the width around the outside is roughly even. So I think it's going to need just a little bit, just do an edge slide here. And select between these points, and I'm just going to do an edge slide here as well. Just even up the outside support loop there. And I'm just looking at this, I wonder if I can just do a quick space operation. No, that's not really going to help it, that's alright. So with that, now we can select these outside ones. I just wanted to do that so now we can see where we don't want to do a space and relax, because that's our support loop for the outer edge. And we can select those and let's go space and relax there. And so yeah, this is a little bit more intense skewing, 100%, but grand scheme of things, not going to be too bad. I can just show you here. So let's turn the subdivision surface off. And I'm just going to apply this matte cap because it's pretty harsh. So you can see the skewing just a bit here, right? So it's actually sort of following our topology. But the thing is, once we start to crank it up with the subdivision surface here, notice it all straightens out because there's more topology and it gets corrected. So if we were to bake this down into a normal map, or we were to just use this high poly mesh as is, it's going to look fine, and the the skewed edges aren't going to be that noticeable. The only noticeable warping you're going to get is down here, and even with the actual bottle sitting in front of me, that's pretty well the way things actually do resolve on it. So, you know, you can argue that it looks bad. You could go ahead and do a bunch of stuff with data transfer modifiers to fix that up if you really wanted to. I'm not particularly concerned about it because I think it looks alright, and once we chuck a glass shader onto it, I think it will be fine. So I'm just looking down here, I'm just not really happy with the depth of this. So I think I might just actually pull this in a bit more. It's sort of just become a little bit too shallow for my liking, so I think I might just push these in on the X a little bit. And do the same with these two verts out the front, just push those in a little bit on the X. Might distort the shape a bit. But yeah, just gives it a little bit more depth there. But for the most part, I think that looks pretty good. And so I know this tutorial's already overstayed its welcome, but I'm just going to go and very, very basically finish this off. So I might actually just apply the mirror modifier here. Fill in the bottom. I for an inset. And sorry, I added a crease here off camera. But yeah, just that's a crease of 0.55 is what I've done there. And then inset this. So this is just going to be like the little lip that's in underneath the bottle. Just do another inset there. And I'm not too worried about the top of all this because it's pretty much going to get covered by the lid. We might be able to come back later in the series when we're doing more of the intermediate work, or maybe the advanced work, and do some of the threading and what have you. Oops. Keyboard just went completely unresponsive there. Just scale this in a bit. I'm actually going to use a bevel on this part here. Give it, whoops, that's the amount, 4 segments. Set it to weight and put it above the subdiv. I'm just using a bevel here just because I kind of feel like it's got more of a profile on it than just a regular crease. Do that, and I'm just very, very haphazardly going to extrude this up to there. I know that doesn't match the shape at all, but I'm not too concerned about it because for all intents and purposes I'm just going to use it with the cap on for this, because as I said, the main teaching of this was this back part with all the curvature. This is nowhere near as exciting to model. This is just very, very rudimentary. And I'll just scale it up again. I can see it's got a bit of a lip. Given the fact I said that I'm not worried about this, I'm still putting more effort into it than I should. Assuming anybody's stuck around to watch this part. I don't blame you if you're not. And let's just bring this up one more time. I'm going to add a loop in the middle because it's a bit rounded. Scale in on everything but the Z axes. Bring it in, do the same again. And I think I'll just leave it like that. Maybe actually just even add a bevel to this with one segment. Give it that rounded appearance. Doesn't look proper at all because it doesn't have the threading or anything. And then just for the hell of it, we can go ahead and we can put that little bowl into the center. So we can just use a cube and subdivide it. Fun little trick to make circles. Apply it, and then in edit mode, if we go Alt Shift and S and then press 1, it spherizes or turns it to a sphere. And so then we can just scale that down just so that this fits roughly within the bounds of our shape here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to set the origin to the 3D cursor. And if I scale out from there, oops, and just stop before it hits the edges, then we've got the top roughly just about there. Shade smooth on that. So that's just a very cheap and nasty way of achieving that. And then the final part to just pull this all together, well, you can use the exact same methodology for the cap here. So we can just get a cube, subdivide it. I'm going to do it. I don't think 4 times is necessary. We'll do it 3 times. And we'll apply that, Alt S and then 1, sorry, Alt Shift S and 1. This one we want to cap it halfway. Select the faces. And I'll just drag that down. And similar for what I did for the little ball at the top. Just set the 3D cursor up there, scale it in. And then we can E to extrude, drag it down just to about there. And then to make adding thickness to it nice and easy, we can just go solidify. And I'm just going to use Control and zoom in. Oops. Just trying to position myself on the inside of this thing. Don't know. It's probably not too important. You can probably just see it from there. Just add a bit more thickness to it, just so it covers everything up. And yeah, there you go. That's pretty rudimentary. But yes, well done on following through with this back part here, assuming you're still watching, because that was the main learning from this. I hope it's taught you a little bit about working with curves and how to sort of like future-proof your work. But yes, and I will see you all in the next tutorial.